All right, guys, welcome back. No fancy intro today, just a ton of poker hands. Stay until the end. We're gonna have GTO Jay go over a couple big hands from his appearance on TCH Live. It's gonna be a fun one. Let's get right into it. We start this session off hot. Yep, getting dealt pocket aces in the hijack. Well, ace 5 suited, but same thing, doesn't matter. I open to 20 and quickly get 3-bet by the cutoff to 60. I already have degen tingles because I'm pretty sure I'm going to rip a 4-bet bluff, but then the small blind and big blind both call 60. Now the 4-bet bluff is absolutely mandatory. These two now have capped ranges and are also out of position. Guys, if you get opportunities like this to punish absolutely horrendous plays and you don't take them, you're no longer a poker player. Retire from the game. Or better yet, just comment when and where you play. I 4-bet to $200.
800. Started with like 8.
The cutoff asks how much I'm playing, despite my stack clearly being bigger than his, which I thought was a bit weird. But I give him the information, tell him I started with about 800. He thinks for a bit and makes the call, leaving himself with about 450 behind. The small and big blind quickly fold, so we're heads up to a flop. It comes queen, 6-7, 2 spades. We have an over, a backdoor straight draw, but most importantly, the nut flush draw. Yep, we're all in.
I'm all in.
All in.
I jam 450 into a pot of about 530. I like this play because it's just so easy to balance. Like, I'm technically bluffing here, but look at what my value range wants to do. If I have pocket aces, no spade, pocket kings, or even pocket queens, I'm jamming this flop because the stack to pot ratio is so low, and it's a dynamic board that even top set could be vulnerable on. Also think about all the better hands that this puts in an absolutely horrible spot. When he flats this 4-bet, it's pretty obvious he has a hand like pocket 9s, pocket 10s, pocket jacks, or ace queen. 9s through jacks just threw up in their mouth, and ace queen is still like, not feeling too great. This looks a lot like pocket kings. Maybe we don't get ace queen to fold, but jacks, 10s, and 9s, I think they find an easy fold here. With all that said, the cutoff's in the tank, and he is staring me down. Usually I just pick one card and stare at it, no matter if I'm bluffing or going for value, but this time I was feeling a little ballsy. I stared right back at him. The situation was quite ridiculous, and I started laughing in the middle of the stare down. This is probably a tell, but I don't care if I get called either way because it's pretty obvious he has pocket jacks and we're flipping. Eventually, he got enough of my stupid face, and evidently enough of his stupid cards. He picks them up, puts them over the line, and we win the super nice pot to start the session. Next, we pick up ace king of hearts, one of the most beautiful sights in all of poker. There's an early position open to 15. I 3-bet to 50 from the low jack. Action folds back to him, and he makes a call. The flop is not great. 9-3 deuce with 1 heart. Early position checks, and I go for a bet of $30. This bet does a couple things. It denies equity from hands like queen jack suited, jack 10 suited, but more importantly, it gives me options later in the hand. If I check back and a heart peels off, I'm not going to be able to bluff with any credibility. Early position makes the call, and the turn is an offsuit 10. I've picked up 0 equity, and this card is really good for the out of position 3-bet calling range. A large portion of this range in live poker is pocket 9s, 10s, and jacks. None of these hands are going to fold to a turn bet. So when he checks to me, I check it back. The river's a 3. It's kind of a good card for my range because now if I have an overpair, I can cooler 10-9 suited. But unfortunately, I don't have aces. I have ace high, and then the early position player bets out for $40. I thought about bluffing, but took one look at this guy, said he's not going to fold, and paid off his $40 bet thinking I only need to be good here like 15% of the time. Yeah, you guys guessed it. He's got pocket jacks. I've been taken to max value town. I'm a payoff wizard. Is this call necessary though? And honestly, I think it kind of is. Like, if there's any chance that he's going for some cheap river bluff, I need to be paying this off. Because again, guys, 40 to win 240, I need 16% equity. So, if he's ever bluffing here, I need to just pay it off. Could have definitely been a lot worse, though. So, whatever. Nice answer. On to the next one. Here we pick up pocket queens on the button. A very tight older woman, tight as in she doesn't play a lot of hands, opens to $20. There's a call and then the cutoff. A young aggro fish, 3 bets to 80. I mean, if I'm 4-betting ace-5 suited, I gotta be 4-betting queens here. Yes, I'm scared that this woman who hasn't played a hand in the last 2 hours has aces or kings, but I'm not too afraid because if she does, she's gonna let me off the hook right away. And as far as the other guy, he's been 3-betting a lot, so yeah, I bump it up to 200. The old lady gives me a disapproving stare and folds her cards, but I'm like, I actually have it this time, lady. What do you want me to do? The aggro kid folds pretty quickly after. We take this hand down, and it's not a big hand, but I wanted to include it because it's a good lesson for you guys. Don't be a bitch just because you're afraid that a tight player might jam it on your face. A lot of the time, if you 3 or 4-bet them with like suspect hands, they're just going to fold because they're too tight. And if they actually have it, they're just going to jam it in your face and you get off scot-free. So, win-win. On to the next one. The very next shuffle, I'm dealt pocket 10s in the cutoff. The $10 straddles on, and an early position short stacker opens to 30. I 3-bet up to 80. It folds back around to him, and he calls, leaving himself with $77 behind. The flop comes jack high. He tanks for a little bit. I can see he's about to jam. The second he says all in, I get my chips in there, and we're off to a run out. The turn's a queen, which isn't great, but the river's pretty great. It's a 10.
I was set. Oh, tough river.
We announce set, and we're good versus ace-queen offsuit. Not a big hand by any means, but we're not only here for the big hands, we're here for the funny hands. Somebody calling a 3-bet out of position, leaving themselves with half pot behind, is going to qualify as funny enough. There's a middle position open to 20. Action folds to me in the small blind, and I peel ace-3 of clubs. In the small blind, I hate flatting. You're at a positional disadvantage, and also at a range disadvantage. Horrible spot to be in. I could fold this hand, but that's no fun. I bump it up to 80. The big blind folds, middle position thinks for a little bit, and puts in the call. Off to an interesting flop of 2, 3, 4, 2 hearts, 1 club. I have a gut shot, middle pair, an over, and a backdoor flush draw. Not much more you can ask for 3-betting the ace-3 suited. I think this board favors the 3-bet caller a bit more. He's going to have hands like deuces, 3s, and 4s more often than I will. But as you saw from the beginning of the video, I'm going to have a massive ace-5 suited advantage. I have a little showdown value. I start with a check. Middle position checks back, and the turn comes another 3. Just an absolutely hilarious card to see. I need to bet now. I go for $75, and he looks at me like, what are you doing betting this card? You really expect me to believe you have a 3? And I'm just like, dude, please call. We need to get to showdown here. I need to show you that I 3-bet you with ace-3 and blow your knit mind. Anyway, he makes the call, and the river is the 8 of hearts, bringing in the front door flush draw. Kind of a scary card, but I'm still so high up in my range, I need to bet. I throw out $300, and looking back, I think I went a little big here. My thought in game was, it's so unlikely for me to have a 3 here. I want to get paid by hands like 9s, 10s, and jacks, but with the front door flush coming in, these hands probably aren't paying off a pot size river bet. Plus, I'm placing this bet to snap fold to any raise, and when that's the case, I don't think you want to go full pot. You should go like 2/3. Yeah, I think a bet of 175 to 225 would be a lot more appropriate here. Either way, he goes in the tank for like 30, 45 seconds, doesn't look happy, and eventually lays it down. Maybe blundered this, maybe didn't. Whatever, either way, on to the next hand. Alright guys, emergency hand history with no footage. This was one of the funniest hands I've ever played. It was so good that I immediately checked to see and confirm that I was recording. I don't know what happened. I somehow was not. Our story begins with action folding to me in the cutoff. I look down at Jack 5 of diamonds and open to $20. Maybe this is a little loose, but likely playing in position. I have 2 of the same shape. We open it up to 20. The small blind and big blind make the call, and we're off to a flop of Jack 5-5 rainbow. Yeah, so we flop a full house with Jack 5, which is utterly hilarious. Action checks to me. I mean, what do you want me to do? I check back. I have too much of the board locked up. We want our opponents to catch up a little bit. Now the turn is a 10, so doesn't really change too much. Small blind checks. Big blind now bets $60, the entirety of the pot. I think for a bit, and I make the call. I'm in position. I can always get a big raise in on the river. The small blind folds, and the river is a king. So it's 5-5, jack, 10, king. The big blind does not slow down. He bets $175. So pot again. So pretty good spot, all things considered. I think for a bit. How much am I going to raise to? And after thinking, I decide on a number no man can say no to, with a king or a 5. And that number is $500. This player now goes into the tank for a while. Agonizing spot, just saying, please pay me off in my head. But on the outside, I'm just looking at the board, trying to remain as stoic and still as possible. After 3 agonizing minutes, he sticks the money in. I show the jack 5, and he was not too happy about it. He starts freaking out, going, oh, how are you calling my raise with jack 5? You're a 1-2 player. What are you, a garbage man? And I'm like, sir, you're in the big blind. You called my raise. After calling me a garbage man, an idiot, and a 1-2 player a couple more times, I take a look at his shirt. He has on a solar panels sales company shirt. I say, sorry, buddy, you're gonna have to knock a lot of doors, sell a lot of panels after this one. He tells me to go fuck myself, and I wish him a nice day and send him on his bike. Guys, live poker. Is there anything better? The final hand of the session starts with some bizarre pre-flop action. There's an under the gun open to $35. Kind of a big open, bro, but I guess somebody calls the 35, and then I peel pocket queens in the low jack. I 3-bet to the casual $125. This is just a comically large sizing for a 3-bet at 2-5, but I guess it's a fine sizing. I don't know. I'm not used to people opening to 7x under the gun. Only the original raiser makes the call, so we're heads up to a flop of 9-3 deuce with 2 clubs. This is a really excellent flop as long as he doesn't have pocket 9s. He checks, and I bet $100. He thinks for a few seconds and makes the call. The turn is another 9, an absolutely beautiful card because now 9s are way less likely, and he doesn't really have too much 9x. I mean, maybe 10-9 suited. I don't know. It's hard to put someone on a range when they open 7x under the gun. He checks, and he has about $450 behind, and I think my only move is to just rip it in here. I want to get the money in versus 10s and jacks, and also deny equity from the club draw. He goes into the tank for a solid 45 seconds, but ends up putting the money in, so we're off to a river in a massive pot. It comes the ace of hearts, which might look scary, but what ace-x is he ever going to have in this spot? I'd be much more afraid of a 10 or a jack. Either way, I flip my hand over, and sure enough, we are good. Wrapping up a session by winning a massive pot. What's better than that, guys? When it was all said and done, I was in for 800, out for 2,731. So a profit of 1,931. Starting to like this 2-5 stuff, guys. All right, let's get into the GTOJ takeover of GTO Optimized.
It's my first time playing on a live stream. We're playing some 5, 10, 25 at Texas Card House in Dallas. I buy in for 5K, which is the max. And the first interesting hand, I open 6-7 of hearts from +2 to 75. JD, a very solid reg, calls with pocket 8s from the cutoff, and Cashman, another very good reg, calls with ace-4 of diamonds from the big blind. So we go 3 ways to the flop. Flop comes 8-9 jack with 2 hearts. We flop pretty big here with the open ender and a flush draw. Cashman checks it over to me, and I'm just gonna check my entire range here, being in the middle of 2 players. JD and Cashman connect with this board pretty hard, so JD decides to bet about half pot for $125. Cashman gets out of the way pretty quick, and I decide to come along with a call.
Open ender, flush draw. JD's got bottom set.
Hi.
Boom.
Turn comes the beautiful king of hearts. We get there immediately with the 7-high flush. I check and flow to JD, but unfortunately he checks it back pretty quick.
Wow. Boy, what a river.
River is now the 9 of spades. Not the worst card, but also not my favorite card either. This card gives JD quite a few boats, but I have a flush. I'm going to go for value, so I decide to bet for about 3/4 pot. I choose a sizing of $375. This sends JD pretty deep into the tank.
Good news for Beeline J is he might hate the news here.
After around 30 seconds, he asks to see how much I'm playing, which is usually not a good sign. And as soon as he asks that, I begin to think about what I'm going to do when I face a raise. His value, he has pocket 8s, pocket 9s, pocket jacks, 9-8, jack 9. So quite a few combinations of value. He has the ace-high flush sometimes that'll trap. JD's certainly a solid player here, and he can definitely have some bluffs. He could definitely turn some hands like 9-10, jack 10, queen jack, king jack into a bluff. But with only the 7-high flush, we don't have all that strong of a hand. So we do end up facing a raise to $1,500 by JD. And I don't even have to think about it. I just fold.
Instant fold.
Great fold on his part. So much that beats him there.
Yeah.
We're pretty low down in our range. We'll have much better hands to call with here. So I just send it right in the muck. And thankfully, being on stream, pretty nice because we get to see that JD did have a boat this time with pocket 8s. We are in the hijack. I open the ace-king offsuit to 75. Slick Rick defends his straddle with the jack 4 of diamonds, and we go heads up to the flop.
Slick Rick is in here with jack 4 of diamonds, flops top pair, no kicker, and best hand. Beeline J, 2 overs, gut shot to Broadway, and the range advantage here. That's 150 on the flop.
I decided to use a big bet on this flop. You could use any number of sizings, but on this occasion, I go for about a pot-sized bet to the tune of 150. I like using a big bet on these double Broadway boards, and Rick decides to come along with a call. Turn is an offsuit deuce, completing the rainbow. Rick checks it over to me. He shouldn't really have many deuce X. I'd expect him to 3-bet that hand pretty often, and when I bet so big on the flop, I think he'd just give it up. So he checks it, and this is when I start turning up the heat. I go for a $600 bet into about 465.
Beeline J sizes it up now on the turn with an overbet, 600 into 465, applying maximum pressure here to Slick Rick's marginal holdings, of which jack 4 is definitely one of them.
Applying the max pressure to any jack X or 10X that he called a flop with, but he does, after a few seconds, decide to continue with the call.
Slick Rick here just holding on for dear life with the top pair.
River comes a 3. This card shouldn't really help Rick, shouldn't really help me. He checks it over to me, and I think about it for a little bit, but decide we're on stream. I'm going to try and make him fold a jack. So I go with a bet of $2,000 into around 1,600-ish, targeting basically his exact holding. He goes pretty deep in the tank, thinks for about 2 minutes, but does end up finding the call with the jack 4.
He is up against it. There it is. Slick Rick makes the call.
This was a hand that I thought I could potentially make him fold using this size, but he does find a pretty nice call, and he ends up scooping this pretty large pot. Overall, I think the hand is pretty well played on both ends. Unfortunately, he called with a jack, but we're on stream. Better for the viewing experience if I'm blasting it in there rather than just checking it back and letting him win. So what are you gonna do?